Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Peter Llewellyn. I run the services at MedComms and the associated websites. You'll find news, views, information, resources for people who work in and around the global MedComms business, by which I mean people who work in and around medical communications, medical education, medical publishing across the globe, or indeed for those who want to learn more about MedComms and maybe join the business. MedCommsNetworking.com tells you what's happening, but have a look at a couple of the others. NetworkPharma TV, you'll find hundreds of videos now because we record these webinars and other sorts of videos. There's 350 odd videos there, so plenty of content to look at. But specifically for those of you who are interested in the business in terms of maybe joining and starting your career in MedComms, there's a website at firstmedcommsjob.com with lots of hopefully helpful insights and so on. And there's more, so go and have a bit of an explore around. Today, I'm absolutely delighted that we've got our gang. I keep calling you a gang. I suppose I felt a little bit more this morning. I was being a bit cliched about that, but it's a bit like getting the gang back together again. We've been having this sort of a meeting with this group. I think it's now 5 or 6 years. The first couple were in real life, and then the last, I think, 3 have been online in this sort of a forum. It's just, I think it's still a great opportunity. Once a year, I like the fact that we get together, this group, and we reflect a bit on what's happened in the last year, and we look forward a little bit as to what's happening, specifically from your company's points of view and your journals, but also the general publishing business. So we're going to do as we always do. We're going to have introductions from each of you in alphabetical order. So I'm going to start with Caroline. We're then going to open this up, just an open Q&A and discussion. And those of you who are online with us, please, as an audience, just join in via the 2 text boxes, ask your questions, share your comments and observations, and we'll weave that into the conversation. So with no further ado, Caroline, you are first alphabetically. It's your turn to go.
Great, thanks, Peter. And hello, everyone. Thanks for joining in today. My name is Caroline Halford, for those of you that don't know me, and I'm the Digital Publishing Manager for ADIS, which is a group of 32 journals published by Springer Nature. So ADIS journals, their main focus is to publish clinical research, real-world evidence, health economics, and reviews on and other article types on drugs and therapeutic interventions. Our most famous journals are Drugs, which celebrated its 50th anniversary this year, Advances in Therapy, Targeted Oncology, Pharmacoeconomics, and Diabetes Therapy. And we're most famous for our rapid publication, open access, our pre-submission inquiry service, which is really popular, and also digital features and plain language summary. And we were the first publisher to get PLS indexed on PubMed. So in terms of what's new and what's popular at ADIS, I'd say over the last couple of years, digital features have been the standout success of our journals. We've been publishing these for about 10 years in conservative numbers, but in 2020, they really took off. In 2020, we quadrupled the number of digital feature submissions that we received, mostly video abstracts, infographics, graphical PLS, and audio discussions. And in 2021, we've launched an in-house service to create talking head video abstracts, as well as animated abstracts and infographics for authors and clients that prefer that hands-off journal-led approach. And we've had lots of good feedback this year from our readers and authors on the usability of the features. I think we're all experiencing a bit of digital fatigue, and we've had a lot of feedback about how digital features have been good shortcuts to learning. Another popular thing at ADIS has been our podcast articles. I can see in the attendees, we've got a couple of submitters of our podcast articles online. So thank you. Thank you for submitting your podcasts. These have been a huge success with our readers, and we've published a lot of these. And for those of you that haven't come across them, these are entirely audio articles where authors discuss key topics, things like pivotal research, conference data, and patient management issues. They are peer-reviewed, they're PubMed indexed, they have DOIs, and they're published on the journal websites on SpringerLink, they're on PubMed, and they're also on all the streaming platforms like Spotify. Really popular as a commentary sort of expert-led format. And news from ADIS is I am co-hosting a parallel session at Ismat in London next month, where I'll be presenting some data on digital features and podcast articles, and feedback on best practice and what we've learned from all the features that we've published over the past few years. So I hope to see you there. And the last thing that's been popular, and it's been quite a new thing at ADIS, is the increase in patient authors that we've seen, both for our patient-physician perspective articles and podcast articles, but also for more established article types like narrative reviews and original research. We now tag patient authors so that they appear and are searchable on PubMed. And it's really heartening to see this. We're seeing an increasing shift in our content to patient centricity and including the patient voice. And it's really great to see that decision making is becoming more patient centric. So that's me. Oh, you're on mute.
I'm on mute. Oh, embarrassing. Okay, sorry about that. Thank you very much, Caroline. That was great. And Hamish, you're next. We're going around in alphabetical order. Yeah, Hamish.
Great. Yeah, thank you very much, Peter. So my name is Hamish McDougall, and I'm the Publishing Solutions Manager at Sage. My job is essentially to act as a first point of contact for publication professionals from MedComms agencies and pharmaceutical companies. So rather than trying to find journal editors or contacts within Sage, feel free to get in contact with me, and I'll either resolve your query myself or put you in contact with the correct person within Sage or externally and make sure that they resolve your query in a timely fashion. So Sage publishes over 280 clinical medicine journals. We have a long-standing tradition of working with societies to publish their titles like Cephalalgia, the Journal of Psychopharmacology, and the European Journal of Ophthalmology. We also have an excellent array of proprietary titles like the Multiple Sclerosis Journal. On top of that, we also have a very strong portfolio of gold level open access journals like our Therapeutic Advances Journal series, where all the content is open access as soon as it's published. Earlier this year, we launched Plasmatology, which is a journal focused on all areas of research related to plasma. This journal runs on a slightly different model as compared to many others and is open access and is free to publish. All APCs in the journal are waived under an educational grant provided by Grifols. Our recently launched rare disease title, Therapeutic Advances in Rare Disease, continues to grow from strength to strength and has seen a lot of submissions in this current year. It's also worth noting that our COVID-19 microsite is still very much active and operating and serves to promote any COVID-19 research published in Sage journals. It kind of acts like a one-stop shop for all educational resources on coronavirus, and we continue to publish any COVID-19 research open access for free. It's also been a very busy year for digital enhancements, and we're always examining ways to streamline our publication extender processes, and we're also looking out for new additions to our publication extender offerings. As ever at Sage, we do also have our Sage Author Services as an option for those who require additional support in the creation of infographics, video abstracts, and PLS. However, authors are under no obligation to use our services. It's also been a very strong year for us promoting our manuscript visibility through our manuscript visibility plan, and we're always on hand to discuss different ways to increase the visibility of your individual manuscripts. And we're very happy to have these conversations very early on in the publication process to support you with that. We also have some new additions to our manuscript visibility plan, like audience targeted e-blasts. And looking ahead to next year, we are planning to launch PLSP as an offering within some selected Sage titles, in particular our Therapeutic Advances titles. And that's me.
Excellent. Thanks, Hamish. And I'm struggling with my alphabet. Sorry about this. Johnny, yeah.
Great, thanks, Peter. No problem. So my name is Jonathan Patience. I'm the head of commissioning at Taylor & Francis. For those who don't know us, Taylor & Francis publishes over 350 medical journals, 90 of which are under the Dove Press imprint, with the remaining 260 under the Taylor & Francis imprint. As well as our Dove journals, notable titles include Current Medical Research and Opinion, aka CMRO, which is celebrating its 50th anniversary as well. Postgraduate Medicine, and Expert Review and Expert Opinion journals. You can explore our journals further at tnfonline.com and dovepress.com. So I'll now just go over some of the developments at Taylor & Francis and Dove Press with you. The first of which is open access conference supplements. If any of you were on this webinar this time last year, you may remember that I announced We were launching this product at the end of 2022. Essentially, when COVID shut down physical conference attendance, we started receiving calls for a publishing outlet to share conference materials like posters and presentations. Taylor and Francis launched OA conference supplements in response to that need. Since then, we've now published several of these supplements in our expert review journals, and they've been very well received. They've mainly taken the form of presentations and poster extracts brought together in a fully citable article with a core theme. It's worth mentioning Taylor & Francis also offers accelerated publication services on our journal, which provides submission to publication timeline of at least 3 to 5 weeks. And these are available on all of our conference supplements too. Next, I'll talk about podcasts. So we published our first podcast within Dove Press in International Journal of COPD. This is going to be part of the Medical Insider COPD series of podcasts. I think this will be the first in an upwards trend in the publication of podcasts within Dove and TNF journals. And we expect podcasts to be published to have educational value and to complement information included in our peer-reviewed articles. TNF are now working on developing their own podcast offering, and so we hope to provide an announcement about that later next year. Next up is plain language summaries. We published the first open pharma recommendations for plain language summaries in CMRO this year, which has been followed up by other studies investigating potential approaches for improving PLS. It's been great to see so much engagement with this topic, and we're continuing to see increasing uptake of PLS across our journals year on year. One ongoing question has been, can we measure the impact PLS are having? That's been a very difficult question to gather evidence on, but we have run a survey recently on 48 recently published articles that have a PLS over a period of 2 months from September to November of this year, asking readers to comment on the PLS feature. Answers were from users from a range of backgrounds, including academic, corporate, MedComms, government, primary care, patients and students. 89% respondents said that PLS was very helpful in improving their understanding of the article topic. 84% said that they were highly likely to include a PLS with their next article submission. The most popular reason given as to why someone would publish one was to connect with patients, caregivers, policymakers, and other decision makers. And the second most popular reason was to improve access to scientific data in a format that's easy to understand. And not having time to write one was the main reason given for why someone would not include a PLS. Finally, preprints. Taylor & Francis has reviewed its approach to preprints, started by conducting a survey of readers and editors engaged with preprints, in which we had 300 responses. The survey uncovered a need to promote our preprint policy more widely and create more positive conversations around them with our external editors and society partners. And as a result, we've clarified some questions about preprints, such as with peer review anonymity for papers with preprints, informing authors that anonymity cannot be guaranteed for papers that have a preprint. The correct point to update the preprint to direct readers to the final version. We now follow up with reminders to authors about this post-publication, as it should be done as soon as the article is published. Authors are also recommended to self-cite the preprint in amongst the acknowledgements and disclaimers in order to link the papers together. And it should be clear to the reader when a citation refers to a preprint instead of a published article, and that the information included in the preprint should not be used to instruct patient care. And that's everything from me. Thanks very much.
Brilliant. Thank you, Johnny. And Joe, are you there?
Yep. Hi, Deb. Thanks, Peter. Yeah, so I'm Jo Walker. I'm the head of publishing solutions at the Future Science Group. So we are a much smaller publisher than all the others, but that's not to say that we don't have as much gravitas in the field. So we publish at the moment, we publish 34 sort of peer-reviewed journals. These offer, all of them offer an open access option, and we also have some titles that are sort of gold open access, where all articles are published on an open access basis. Some of our titles include the more well-known journals Future Oncology, Journal of Comparative Effectiveness Research, and we also publish some really niche titles like regenerative medicine and nanomedicine. So, you know, as everyone else has said, this year we've seen a lot of interest in digital features. We, you know, we're seeing lots of articles as well that are interested in multiple digital features. So it could be, you know, a podcast, a video, an infographic, you know, where they're trying to sort of make people, you know, authors are recognizing that readers learn different ways, and they're interested in offering different formats to help them understand the article. So as such, we've sort of created a new feature called a publication in focus, which sort of collates all the various features on an article on a dedicated microsite, either on our journal platform or on one of our related digital hubs. So for instance, if you publish in Future Oncology and create a series of digital features on that article, you can have a publication in focus on our digital site, Oncology Central, and then it's sort of shared with the audience of Oncology Central as sort of over various other platforms, and you've got really a nice collection of resources around an article. And what's interesting with that as well is because we're now seeing people approach us to do these types of features for articles that we've not published. Unfortunately, and this group isn't one of them. There are many journals, publishers out there that don't offer digital features. So we recognize this need and are able to offer a platform for people to create digital features for sort of journals published elsewhere. And yeah, that's something that's really receiving a lot of interest. And like others as well, I'd be remiss in not mentioning plain language summaries. We've been well, I don't want to, blow my own trumpet, but we're the first publisher who's publishing plain language summaries as standalone articles in our journals. So these are, as we call them, plain language summaries of publications, or PLSPs. So these are standalone, peer-reviewed, they're open access, they're given a DOI, and they're published very much alongside all the regular content within the journal. But they're slightly different in that they're sort of written by, they can be written by patients. They are very much designed as well like an infographic, so figures, graphics, etc., part of the flow of the article. And again, these articles, plain language summaries, can summarize any article, so we're seeing quite a lot of interest in people wanting to do PLSPs of journals that we've not published, for instance from the Lancet, New England Journal, etc. So far we've published 16 of these articles across a variety of titles, including Future Oncology, Neurodegenerative Disease Management, and Future Rare Diseases. And, we've got a lot of interest for next year. And we're also looking to do new different types of plain language summaries, different digital enhancements alongside plain language summaries as well. So this really is a lot of, we're all get daily inquiries about, can we do this, can we do that? And every day as well, I'm updating our author guidelines for these as more and more things come out. We're also seeing there's quite a lot of interest in people making these more accessible, so we can feature translations alongside these articles, videos, you name it, I'm pretty sure we could do it. So yeah, that's a really quick update from me.
Absolutely excellent. Thank you very much. And I think it's great if people, I don't know, there are some people in the audience who might have been at one of these meetings each of the last few years, and it's interesting to hear the stories develop. Some of them people haven't, but I think it's great that that the four of you come online like this. And just to make an absolutely clear point, you are the four right people, frankly, to have on a call like this. If there's any confusion out in the audience watching the video, whatever, you guys want to hear from people, they can contact you. Someone asked very immediately about contact details. I'm just going to say the easiest thing is talk to you on LinkedIn, and you'll be very happy to hear. But it is important that people know that you are the right person. I just like to emphasize that. Please, part of the point of these webinars is to follow up with people directly. I hope people will follow up via LinkedIn. There's been a couple of questions coming in via chat, and I think, John, you've answered a couple of them, but just to get that out in the open, as it were, a couple of people asking about whether you published your surveys and so on. There was some interesting data there. You're saying that you haven't published surveys yet. Obviously, you'd be happy to share it if people want to follow up directly. But it's interesting. I'm always a big one for saying, we need to get more of this information out in the public arena and shared properly. So I'd be applauding if you're going to be doing that. But certainly in the meantime, people can talk to you directly. And that probably covers off the main questions that come in so far. But in the audience,
can I just say as well, in terms of PLS, there will be me and some colleagues from Spring Healthcare are actually presenting an oral abstract on the impact of PLS as well. So hopefully anyone that's attending the meeting stay tuned. It'll be on the main stage as part
Yeah,
of
we
the
should.
presentation.
You're talking about the Ismat meeting in the new year, yeah. So just to clarify for viewers of the video, in 6 months' time, we're talking about an Ismat meeting that you'll have missed. But anyway, don't worry about that. The important thing is, if you're interested, follow up with Caroline, whatever time of the month or year you're watching this sort of thing. Okay, let's open this up in some discussion, and just to emphasize to the audience, we'd love to have your questions, comments, observations. You've got a couple of text boxes. If you look at the bottom of your screen, Q&A box and chat box, send them in. People are already sending them in. We'll weave them into the conversation. Okay. And so what I wanted to do first, and just bounce this around, okay, and whoever wants to go first, stick your hand up as well. But looking back over the last year, and you've talked a little bit about this, but I was interested in some of the things you were talking about when we were talking before. Over the last year, what sort of issues and challenges have you faced? You've talked about, or you talked separately about the resourcing issues and peer review problems, and it's just it's been a crazy year on the back of another crazy year, so into two crazy years. But just talk a little bit about the practicalities of what's going on at your end, how it's been more difficult or not, if I'm misunderstanding you, but just help us understand the practicalities of publishing this content. Who wants to sort of go with that? Who's willing to start off? Go on, otherwise I'm going to choose someone.
Yeah,
go on, Joe. Go.
Yeah, so I think there's not been we've had a lot more content this year than we have had ever across all our journals. I don't think it's just, I don't know, people have got a lot more to say. And I think I imagine it's the same then across all publishers, all journals, etc. So therefore the pressure on peer reviewers to find, peer reviewers time, and especially as they're now getting back to doing their own research, etc. That the peer review times for us have been slower than we would ideally like, and we're looking at ways to improve it, but I think that has then had an unfortunate effect then on publication times. I mean, we ourselves offer a fast track option, so we sort of really protect that as much as possible. So those our fast tracks option hasn't been suffered because we have ways around that. But I think just for anyone going through our standard publication route, there has been a slight delay. I mean, we try and make it up in terms of our turnaround of production times, etc., but there's still that delay as well. And I think in the same way as well, when it comes to revising an article, we're seeing a lot more time taken over revising a paper because authors are busy elsewhere. They may be working on multiple papers. So I think that across the whole process, the times have been a bit slower than we would have liked, but some on us, some on authors, etc. So I think it's hopefully it's something that will improve as we go back to normal, maybe
whatever normal is. But it's just an inevitability, isn't it? I mean, it's not something to be embarrassed about, is it? I mean, you've got more content coming in,
exactly,
for lots of reasons, and everybody's struggling with the workloads for lots of reasons, so there's bound to be a little bit of a problem in the middle if you're trying to make something happen. I just see that as worth acknowledging and saying, well, this is just real life. But any of the others, are you having the same experiences? Caroline, have you got the same experiences?
To be fair, for the A-list journals, I mean, we are a small portfolio, but we've not experienced problems with peer review. But I think that's because our main ethos is rapid publication. We are quite fortunate is that we've got a big in-house team whose job it is to daily sort of manage that process. So our peer review times have still been as rapid, but we've had more challenges in production, really. And I think as production's done overseas in different countries where COVID restrictions might be affecting teams in different ways, I think that's where we've experienced a bit more snagging. So yeah, that's been the main thing. But I appreciate what you're saying, Joe, about peer review. And I think I've heard a lot about, we've certainly received more papers than we ever have before. And the feedback that we've been getting is maybe because of the lack of satisfaction with virtual conferences, we've seen a lot of funders not doing the conference presentations and putting that money into publications and going straight to publication. So I think that's really put extra pressure on journals globally. So I think at Springer Nature, we're doing a lot to try and increase the peer reviewer pool. There's like peer review training courses and sort of coaching courses that are freely available online for editors-in-chief to help sort of recruit and train peer reviewers. So yeah, I think that can be a real pain point there.
Okay. I mean, and also, sorry, same question as the other two, but I was going to just add a little bit into that. A couple of years ago, I think when we were talking, we were anticipating that there was going to be a problem with clinical trials, for instance, slowing up. And there was a prediction that there'd be less, or arguably possibly less, publication work happening a year, 2 years down the line. I just wonder whether you've seen any evidence of that. I mean, in amongst the more content you're getting, is there any evidence that the trials have slowed and therefore that's stopped or slowed down that side of things? Johnny, you're shaking your head, so. Yeah,
I'd say from our side, we've definitely seen an increase in submissions. I mean, in line with what Joe and Caroline have said, is that we've, year on year just seen a real bumper couple of years in submissions. I'm not sure whether it's because people have more time to sit down and focus on their publications, or if they're maybe people aren't as caught up with travel. I'm not sure what it is, to be honest. But we're definitely seeing increases in submissions, and on the peer review side of things, I think we've done quite well to keep on top of our turnaround times, I would say, but I would say that it's requiring extra resource to go into it. So we're finding that on our side, we're needing to spend more time finding reviewers and finding people who are actually available to write. And that's been quite difficult, especially in certain areas. I mean, I think some areas more so than others, especially if you're in infectious diseases or vaccinology sort of areas, then, those areas, it's becoming harder and harder because we see so many COVID papers now, and people are starting to kind of, I think, get a bit fatigued of reviewing COVID papers, I think. And so it is becoming harder, but we are kind of, especially at the beginning, we were very adamant about making sure that they are in some way prioritized to make sure that we're getting that COVID content out there to support the kind of global effort in tackling the disease. And I think we still are doing that. But I think there is a bit of a sense that from reviewers that, there's a lot of research out there now, as people have seen lots of it, and people are being a bit more discerning about what sorts of content they would recommend for acceptance.
That's interesting.
Things, kind of similar issues. We have seen some issues with delays on that side, just because of how some of the areas where the suppliers are based can be hit.
Okay, Hamish, do you want to pick up on that one? And I'm interested in that. Are you seeing just so much COVID coming through that you're going, we've got to be a bit more sort of selective about this? But what's your comment, Hamish, on what we talked about?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point, and I think initially as well, in 2020 we looked at sort of basically just dedicating more time to all COVID-19 research papers and sort of doing accelerated peer review, things like that. But given the volume of COVID-19 research, I think we've had to be a bit more selective in some of those offerings as well. I think, the other thing is, so I want to sort of echo some of the sentiments of Joe and Johnny and Caroline, and sort of a little bit of all of it. So we're definitely getting a lot more submissions. In terms of peer review, it's so dependent on the different sort of therapeutic areas, like orthopedics. I mean, obviously there's been a lot of elective surgeries cancelled. So I think, the orthopedic peer review times have come crashing down. But obviously for, some of the other ones, like, respiratory diseases and infectious diseases, those peer review times have increased. So it's really, really dependent on the therapeutic area. And probably similar to Caroline as well. I mean, we sort of have vendor-based production in countries that have been quite hit hard by COVID. So, initially we did actually sort of see a few months where production times were really sort of quite badly affected. They've recovered quite a lot. What I would say is that in 2021, it's definitely been easier than 2020. I think, we're all sort of prepared for what was going to happen this year, whereas, 2020, it's us and we're quite blindsided with everything. So we didn't really have the chance to sort of get things in place and sort of compensate for any potential problems.
Okay. So it's just asking the stupid question, but, looking ahead for 2022, do you see more of the same? I mean, somebody said getting back to normal. I'm not sure what that is, but, are you realistically expecting it to change very much? Are you just getting more under control, as it were, of the challenges we're facing? Anyone got an opinion on that? Caroline, you're nodding your head.
Yeah, I think so. I just echo what Hamish says. Definitely, I think it was a real scramble in 2020 to sort of get our head round the torrent of research, but also sort of managing production and managing peer review. But I think we're now all really prepared. I think companies have adapted brilliantly to virtual working, sort of teaming up. increasing teams where teams have needed to be increased, and just really looking at different ways of engaging audiences. I think we're seeing such a shift in readership with the with digital fatigue, and now that conferences are still virtual, there's such a shift to shortcuts, and that's a real balance. I think we've like speaking to what we've all been saying about the torrent of COVID research, there's such a pressure to we can't just rush things out there. We've got to really carefully peer review, make sure that what we're publishing is sort of robust and timely, but also at the same time appreciate that there's so much out there that readers are looking for shortcuts to learning. So how can we maximize the impacts of research? But I think we're all equipped to do that now.
And it's interesting. I mean, it's also interesting listening to what you said there. So that leads us into digital enhancements. And anyone that's been at one of these meetings every year for the last 5 years, whatever, knows that we always talk about digital enhancements. I mean, it's quite obvious to me listening to you talk and thinking back to what we talked about for several years, that you're in a very different place now with digital enhancements than you were last year, let alone before that. You're all talking much more confidently about how much you're doing, the sorts of different enhancements, the fact that it's actually happening now. It's just obvious you're in a very different place to a year ago. Matt Gooding has asked a question here about difficulty finding out whether particular journals support digital extenders, etc. Would be good if that was more easily accessible. Just from your points of view with your journals, are you all going to say, well, in our case, we're all doing a good job and you can find our information, Matt? Or do you think that is a problem that people are still struggling to find out whether you can or can't? Anybody willing to take that one on? I
think generally, I mean, do we all do digital features? I feel like we all do, don't we, in this?
Certainly sounded like you all did today, yeah.
But I must admit, if I was MedComms, I think I'd struggle to find, because I mean, I think journal websites are not always the best set up to make that information findable. I will say that Ismat, the MPIP tool, the Enhanced Publication Options Navigator tool, that's really available on, if you search MPIP EPON, that is a database with about 450 journals in it, where you can search for journals that will do digital features, PLS, and open access. It's still in the pilot phase. So I know there's still quite a lot of journals that are missing from that, but it's a really good starting point if you are looking for journals. You can search by therapy area and publisher and search for different enhancement types and whether they're peer reviewed. So I recommend that as a good starting point.
Is that freely accessible, that resource?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Just stick with the digital enhancements for a little bit. And we've always talked about this. There's always a sense of frustration, or has been, what data is really becoming available to prove that this stuff is worth doing. I get the sense there's more data out there now about the fact that they are actually useful. Is that a fair comment? Again, Caroline, this is your area, but is that a fair comment?
Definitely. And I agree with everyone. We've had for years, and even up until 2020, we were having comments like, yes, we all know anecdotally that digital features are what readers are looking for, because I know that's what I'm looking for. And you can see that in the way that news is reported. If you go on the BBC website, there's always key summary points and maybe a video at the top. So, but we have had a lot of calls for, what is the evidence? And definitely in the last few years, we've seen at least 4 or 5 key publications come out to support the impact. So there's an article that I co-authored on the Ismat forum that pulled together data from Taylor and Francis, Wiley and Springer Nature that all showed that articles with video abstracts are more downloaded than articles without. But so that's really good evidence. But then in terms of the richness of what digital features bring, PLOS ONE did a great study in 2019, Greg Benner and Simon. Again, it's an open access article, and it showed that video abstracts and PLS for both science audiences and non-science audiences actually increase the understanding of the article. So readers could understand more of the article and they retain more of that information. The American Geriatric Society Journal found the same for infographics, that they are great tools for helping embedding learning. So there's been about 3 or 4 studies coming out that are now showing return on investment for these.
Okay, just Caroline, and you can answer this. I know you can answer this. So there's several questions coming in to clarify where's the place, where's the link, where's the website. Can you just spell out what's the best place to go to?
So if you go, I mean, I can put it in the chat when we're talking about something else, but
speak it out, yeah.
If you Google MPIP and then separate word EPON, that should, oh yeah, brilliant. Neve has just put the link in the chat. So yeah, you can easily access it through the link that's in the chat now, mpip-initiative.org.
Yeah, so I was trying to get you to say it out because there'll be people watching the video who can't see the chat, so that's okay. But I think we got there. So thank you very much. Just and as always, anybody who wants to know more information, you're the font of all knowledge on this sort of thing, so that works quite well. The PLS side of it, and Joe, I'm going to pull you into this one. I know this is your area of special interest, but as a natural extender from this, so you've been doing a lot on the PLS side. And again, the evidence is becoming clear, isn't it? That they are valuable and the demand is there and so on. And what interested me was you're talking about doing PLSP for articles that are in other journals. How does that work in practice?
Yeah, so as I said, I think we will have published 16 PLSPs this year, and most of them, I would say probably about 14 of those have been summaries of articles that we haven't published. So they've been from, say, Annals of Oncology or New England Journal, and that's because we consider these and as an acceptable secondary publication according to the ICMJE criteria. Okay. And there's a series of sort of criteria that you have to meet. So it's for a different audience, which it's a lay non-specialist audience. It's written in a different type of language, it's got a different title, there's various little different criteria, and that's how we then perceive them. And and also quite often the original article could be published open access, and in which case because the PLSPs include the original authors, they can then sort of rewrite information from their, and they all link together. Yeah. We include links to the original article in the article on the website. They're linked in PubMed, on clinicaltrials.gov, etc. So it all sort of links up, so you can. And then what we're trying to do as well is try and look at various metrics about how many times people go from the plain language summary to the original article, and that we are actually seeing a bit of an increase there, which is good because it means that it's it's another tool for people to help to understand the original article as well. And again, we're sort of looking at we've got a survey running as well on each of the PLSPs that we've published, sort of asking people to sort of explain did it help you understand the subject? Do you really is the language, asking them what the language is like, will you go on to read the original paper exactly? So we've got that running for a few months, so we're hopefully to be able to share the results of that as well. Good. Okay. Okay.
I'm going to bounce this to Johnny. In terms of following this sort of line of thought on PLS, and I'm always keen to say PLS isn't just for patients, it's for the wider audience, but patients is a big part of this. And I think a couple of you talked about patient authors and reviewers and so on. Johnny, I don't think I'm putting you on the spot here. Just talk a little bit about what you're doing at your company about involving the patients more. And I think again that's been a change from even a year ago.
Yeah, it's a good question. So we have been, so I think actually as Joe or Caroline mentioned it earlier, that we are encouraging the use of the institution as a patient author, so that when patients are listed on a publication, they can easily be searchable on PubMed. So if you would search for institution, you search for patient author, you come up with a list of patient authored publications, and that might help in the future. I think currently there aren't that many, but as that builds up over time, that should hopefully form a pool of not only useful patient authored articles, but a pool of patient reviewers who might be willing to help review papers that have plain language summaries. So we're hoping that using that will gradually kind of build up that pool and help us to have more sight of who is involved in that space and who might be willing to act as a patient author more often, and even a patient reviewer.
Okay, so I'm going to follow this one for a minute. Can you tell me a little bit more about the challenges? I would imagine there are different sorts of challenges finding the patient reviewers, for instance, and you're saying, I think you're saying quite clearly it's an early stage and it will grow, but I guess there are some challenges maybe unique to finding patient reviewers. Just tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why we haven't sort of made it a mandatory requirement to have a patient reviewer on plain language summaries up till now, and probably won't in the immediate future, but perhaps once there is a pool, a more easily findable pool of patient reviewers, that might be something that we then can pursue. So that is, you've kind of hit the nail on the head there, and that patient reviewers are very difficult to find because there's not it's not like in the current literature where reviewers are quite easy to find, because you can clearly see who's working on what publications, and you can clearly find the right authors, well, the right peer reviewers who have authored similar publications in the past. With patient reviewers, you don't have that, so it's very difficult to know firstly kind of who is willing to review that, but also kind of how would you be able to contact them? How would you be able to know who they are? And I think that's a really big hurdle to overcome at the moment.
Again, I think it's just important to face up to these sorts of things. It's like, because everyone talks about this stuff, but sometimes they just sort of gloss over the practicalities. I was going to go to Hamish, but Joe, you were trying to cut in there. Sorry, but Hamish, I'll ask you in a minute.
I was just going to say I mean, with patient reviewers, there's also the fact that, they are patients. It's not part of their day job as such to do peer review. So you do need to factor in that they should be, recompensed for their time, because, it's not part of their day job. They, you might, so we, for instance, when we ask patients to review PLS, we do pay them sort of fair market value for their time, just because we do appreciate that, it is something that they do in their spare time, so that's what we do. And also, you don't necessarily, for us as well, we don't necessarily find those specialist patients. So say if we had a PLS in breast cancer, we wouldn't necessarily ask a breast cancer patient to review it, because after all, you are, the breast cancer patient might be too specialist in that area, so they might not be able to review it as well as perhaps someone who is not familiar with the area, because you have various different people who are reading PLS. There could be a breast cancer patient who's had the disease for a long time, or it could be somebody who new is looking for new information. So I think it really depends on how you want the PLS reviewed as well. I mean, we get the PLS reviewed for language accuracy, and just how well it can be read, etc., rather than for sort of the technicalities within the article. So I think it really depends on what you're looking for from a peer review of a PLS.
Okay, Hamish, do you want to just pick that one up? What happens at Sage?
Yeah, so I think, I'd really just be sort of repeating what Joe and Johnny have said at the moment. Very similar as well. We try and sort of involve patients, especially we have some very sort of patient-centric journals, like our drug safety journal, our rare disease title, and we try and sort of involve them, like we have them on the editorial board, and we try and sort of get them involved in peer review where possible. But as I sort of mentioned, there are sort of challenges in that as well. We do have some sort of more patient-centric article types as well, like patient perspectives, which we're started looking at more and more. And I think they're sort of very valuable for providing a sort of very different kind of publication. I also just wanted to kind of go back to data on digital extenders, because we do actually have some very, very nice data provided to us by our sort of vendor partners. And I mean, I was looking at this the other day, and it's really quite convincing. And it was saying, articles with video abstracts are downloaded 3 times more often than articles without video abstracts, and our metric scores are 6.8 times higher. For infographics, articles are downloaded 4.6 times more often than those without, and our metric scores on average 3 times higher. And we do have some sort of very nascent data on PLS as well. Obviously, it's a much smaller sample size. But this also quite caught me off guard as well, because I wasn't expecting PLS to make such a big difference. But articles with PLS are downloaded 3 times more often and have 7.5 times higher altmetric scores. So I think the data around there is really quite convincing. And I think at this stage we've all suspected for a long time they're very efficacious for sort of improving the ways in which people share your information and download it. But only now we actually have sort of hard, solid data to back that up as well, and it's much more convincing than I think any of us could have predicted.
Okay, I'm going to ask the question before someone fires it at us on the day, as it were, but have you published that data?
So this isn't our data to publish. This comes from our partners who sort of help us create video abstracts, infographics, and PLS. I should be able to find the place for you, but I'd have to sort of double check for the link. Okay,
so yes, the message for today is if people are interested in following up on that data, you're happy to talk about it more. Yes, I'm just going to go as usual. The more we can get this out in the public arena, and someone somewhere needs to collect this stuff in a better way, I think, and go, come here and find it. And I know these maps, the MPIPs, and all the rest of it are doing it. to an extent, but they could do so much more. What I just wanted to finish on was a completely different topic. I was quite keen to get this one in before we wrap up, but I don't think we've ever talked about this before, but it's come up more and more in lots of different ways over the last year, is the whole sustainability question. And I'm just going to throw this at each of you and ask for, what if anything, at your company does sustainability mean? What are you doing, if anything? I'm just going to leave it completely open and you interpret how you like. But it's, words are thrown around, things are happening, statements are made. Who am I going to start with? Caroline, I'm going to start with you, Caroline. Just tell us a little, and I'll ask each of you, just as a final thing, just to talk a bit about your position, your company's position on sustainability, whatever that means to you.
Brilliant. Thanks, Peter. So yeah, Spring NHS really stepped up on climate action this year. We've actually this year, and you can have a look at this at the press releases on springnature.com. We've got a new climate action office led by Thea Shearer, where we're really focused on accelerating delivery of our environment and sustainability goals. We became carbon neutral in 2020. We were the first publisher to sign up to the climate pledge and commitment to being net zero by 2040, a decade ahead of the Paris Agreement. So yeah, we've done a lot in the offices, reducing energy use and buying green electricity where possible, minimizing plastic wrapping. We've got like a green office network of within, I think it's 120 colleagues in 12 countries, but in every office, we've got sort of a real focus on green, because yeah, and it's the right time to do it, I think, now that we're all sort of set up virtually and we can make actionable changes in terms of reducing greenhouse emissions.
Okay, so I find that interesting. I'm going to go in alphabetical order for want of something else to do. Hamish, go on, what's the position at Sage?
Yeah, absolutely. So sustainability has been a very important aspect at Sage for a very long time. So 10 years ago, we founded the Sage Green Group, and yeah, it's been running for quite a long time. And there's a lot of progress that's been made in that time. So we have 6 different work streams involving employees and managers and directors, tackling everything from publishing activities to office etiquette. And it's really just aimed at reducing our carbon footprint and our impact on the environment. So that's everything from offsetting carbon from travel to reducing plastic, things like plastic wrapping. We're also a founding publisher of the PREPS database, which uses the Edgemont grading system to determine the sustainability of different paper suppliers. So obviously, as a publisher, there's all kinds of things we have to think about.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure you were coming on with something else there, so sorry, I hesitated there. But thank you, Hamish. Johnny, what's the position at your end?
Yes, so Taylor and Francis is owned by an Informa group of companies, and they've so Informa as a whole has established a new sustainability program called Fast to Zero, which has 9 main goals. I won't go over all of them with you, but just a few highlights are to become carbon neutral as a business and across all of our products by 2025, to become zero waste and zero carbon by 2030. And another one is also to enable 1 million disconnected people to access networks and knowledge by 2025. So sustainability goes beyond just environmental matters and also to engagement with communities. And so the kind of the sustainability program encompasses all of that too. Also worth mentioning that 95% of our electricity comes from renewable sources at the moment. So I think we have some really good targets to aim for.
Excellent. And Joe, go on. And I'm going to wrap this up at this point, okay? And if you're in the audience, we'll carry on going through till the top of the hour. We've got some time to answer a couple more questions here, but I just want to wrap up on this topic. So Joe, go on. What's the position at Future?
We're such a small company that we don't really have a sustainability policy at the moment. I mean, that's not to say that we won't in the future, but I know, for instance, that we have certainly reduced the print runs for all of our journals, and we still get asked as well by MedComms, who are making a pre-submission inquiry, what's the print run for your journal, which I don't think really embraces the sort of the whole sustainability of the MedComms field or the publications field. But anyway, we are So we've reduced all our print runs. Many of our journals as well are no longer printed. So, there's all that as well. We're sort of, looking at new sort of resources for sort of, if we do ever do reprints and stuff like that, using sustainable sources for sort of the paper that we use, etc. And I mean, we only have sort of, 2 floors of an office as well. So in terms of making an impact there, we're quite limited, but, there's all things that we're doing, as within our office to try and sort of, we've got a green committee who are looking at different ways that within the office as well that we can sort of reduce our carbon footprint.
Okay, so I'm quite glad I did that, actually. I forced it slightly, and I'm glad we had time to sort of, because I think actually just listening to the 4 of you talk again, I mean, it's interesting that the companies, and we know this generally, people are taking it more seriously, and it's at company levels, at individual levels and so on, but you actually covered quite a few points there. It'd be interesting maybe to turn this into a longer discussion, and unfortunately we're not going to do it today. But I think it's a topic, we've all got to face up to it and think about it. There's little things that you can do on your own, like within the office and all the rest of it, and there's bigger questions about print runs and so on. So maybe that's a topic for another day, but I think it was interesting from my point of view just to listen to you 4 talking about it and some of the points that are raised, and maybe that will make other people think as well. And one of the things I quite like doing is hopefully sparking conversations in other places and so on. So I think that was quite useful, but I am going to draw the line on that because we've gone, as usual, slightly over our time. Okay, so if you're in the audience, don't run away because we will be here to the top of the hour and we've still got time to answer a couple of questions. But a huge thank you to you 4. Thank you very much, as always, for coming online. Emphasize the fact to anyone watching the video or watching today, you would love to hear from them. LinkedIn is the obvious way to do that. And you are the right people at the publishers to talk to, or certainly a good gateway into the publishers. So thank you very much for coming and talking to us. From my point of view, if people are interested, medcommsnetworking.com, go and have a look at all the things that are going on there. And I'm personally always happy to hear from anybody about anything, and I will do what I can to help. So on that note, I'm going to ask everyone to give us a wave. Everyone stay safe and well in these crazy times. Thank you very much, everybody. Enjoy your day. Bye-bye.